What's up everybody, my name is Jesse, the Laotian Motion, and this is my 1994 Mitsubishi 3000 GT. Today we're going to take a look at the cooling system and why the seller ultimately decided to get rid of the car. The previous owner told me that the car got hot and he pulled over to the side of the road instantly to prevent it from overheating. Now, previous episodes I checked out the intake manifold and I got the battery sorted out and we got the car to start again. Now I'm going to take a look at the reason why the car ultimately doesn't run, and that's the cooling system. Now previously, I saw that one of the fans was very damaged and I removed it. So now this episode we're going to take this fan off and hopefully pressurize the cooling system in a safe way to where we can see where any possible leaks could be. The bolts we're going to remove are all 10mm on the front of the radiator. Now that the two bolts that hold the fan to the radiator have been removed, I'm going to take the one bolt that holds the upper radiator hose on and take it off. I thought I had emptied the cooling system before I started, but clearly I didn't. I'm going to go get a pan to hopefully collect all of the radiator fluid before I continue. So now that I got a pan, I'm going to go under the car and release the lower radiator hose, hopefully purging most of the car of its coolant. The lower radiator hose can be found right underneath the passenger side of the car. It should be right here. So I'll undo this hose clamp, let the hose down, and drain all the coolant. Now that pretty much all the coolant's been let out from the lower radiator hose, I can take off the upper radiator hose. Now that the upper radiator hose is out of the way, I can remove one of the two fans. It seems the fan is held in a little more securely than I thought. At the very bottom of the fan was in fact another one of the bolts holding it on. Now that all those are removed, hopefully I can take the fan out. The only thing holding the fan now in is the connector, and I'll be removing that after I clip one of the zip ties. Very interesting. There seems to be something wired directly from the fan to the wiring loom. I'm unsure how or why this is plugged in, but it is in fact plugged in. So I'll just be removing it from the car like this. So now that the fans are both removed, I'll plug in back both radiator hoses and give the car a radiator pressure test. That's one, and down here, that's two. I'll snug both of these up off camera. Now we're going to be using something called a radiator pressure test. Now, what is a radiator pressure test? Well, it simulates the pressures going on inside your cooling system while the car is running. I have one right here. It consists of a gauge to measure the pressure inside the chamber, a vacuum pump, and an adapter to make it fit compatible to your cooling system. While your car is running, combustion is happening in each of the cylinders. Now that will heat up the coolant around it. Now coolant boils around 230 degrees, but under pressure it raises it to about 250 degrees. It's really bad if coolant boils in your cooling system, because if that happens, then you have hot spots inside your engine, and that's not good. So what the coolant pressure tester tests, or the radiator pressure test, tests is if your cooling system can withstand the pressures of normal engine operation. If it can, that means the engine is in good working cooling order. And from what the previous owner told me, it isn't. I got this adapter. It screws right into the radiator cap on my car and can make a tight seal and give the correct pressures I need. So what you do is you take the radiator cap off, you take the new tip, you squeeze it on the way you would put a radiator cap on, put it on tight, and twist. Now that that's on the radiator cap location, we're going to take the end of the gauge and plug it right in to the radiator pressure tester cap. Now that we're all plugged in, I'm going to add pressure to the chamber with this vacuum pump and check the gauge, and while doing that, inspect for any leaks. Well, I'm pumping it up and I can't seem to hold any pressure at all. So that tells me that there's a big leak in the cooling system somewhere. Let me go tighten up some hoses. So I'm going to pressurize the system and look for the leak. So you can see we got some pressure, and I can hear hissing coming from the very bottom of the radiator. Uh-oh. I apologize for the change of lighting, but it gets dark rather fast here in Florida. I'm going to take the radiator out and inspect it outside of the car in more light to better see what's going on. So it's been about a day since last cut, and I brought the radiator into my house. And unfortunately, it seems to be making this brown goo come out of it. So I'm going to try and wash it out and perform a pressure test on just the radiator to see if we can isolate where it's leaking. So I've gone outside, I got myself a hose, and I got myself the radiator, and now I'm going to try and flush out the radiator and see, and just clean it up a whole bunch and see where the leak could be coming from. Now that it's all rinsed off and completely flushed through, I'm going to work on it outside to do a radiator pressure test and hopefully find my leak. So in order to do a pressure test on the radiator, we'll need to seal up both ends of the radiator. Now, I checked earlier and all the plugs in the bottom of the radiator are properly closed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some of these adapters that I got inside my pressure testing kit and block them up. You stick one end on the top and twist. You stick the other end in the bottom and twist, and then you hook up your pressure gauge to the radiator. You take your gauge, hook it up, and slowly start pumping it full of air. And unfortunately, I can't seem to get any pressure anywhere. So let me check my connections again. So now I filled the entire radiator with water, and I realized you have to hold a finger on the end of that top port or else this will happen. So I'm going to cover it real fast and try to find the leak. And I seem to have found my leak. Right here at the bottom of the radiator, right next to these tabs, I hear bubbling right as soon as I get any pressure in the system. So I found my leak, it's right down here. I have a feeling these tabs just weren't bent in properly. And now I can repair the leak and hopefully drive the car. So because of the very apparent leak in my radiator, I'm going to use one of my favorite things, is JB Weld. Basically, it's just this strong bond that forms between an epoxy and your material. I use it all the time to fix most common leaks and repairs. And since this is a pretty low pressure area, which is, you know, a radiator, it doesn't probably get over 20 psi, and it's good for 4400 psi. So I think I'm really in the clear in patching up this hole. The way to use JB Weld is it comes in this two-part epoxy. You take your lid off, unscrew and take it off, and you have a two-piece resin. When these two chemicals are mixed together, it makes a tight and strong bond with whatever you're dealing with. So I'm going to take it and squeeze some of it out onto this cardboard. That should be way more than enough. I'm going to put the cap back on real fast so I don't waste any. And you just start mixing and mixing and mixing. And when it becomes a uniform paste, it's good to use. So I'm just going to mix it together for 5-10 seconds. Make sure everything's all mixed in nice and strong so that when I use it, it's a strong bond. So now that I have pretty much all of it mixed together, I'm going to start applying it carefully to the area. And I remember it's right here is where the leaking occurred. You can still see some water on there. So I'm just going to carefully scoop it off and lay it inside the area that needs essentially a glue. Scrape it off the cardboard, gently fill the area at the bottom of the radiator. Now the cure time for this is about 1 hour, so I can't really disturb or touch the radiator for about an hour after I do this, which is fine. I can go work on some other things during that time, and there is some drive time to the workshop. Now that I've pretty much covered the entire area with JB Weld epoxy, I'm just going to sit here and wait for it to cure.
I'll let you know when I'm on the way.
can't identify where it's coming from.
Thanks for watching.